This is Techie and The Biz, a podcast to explain and simplify how business technology is changing and why it can benefit your organization. Cybersecurity and cyber attacks have become one of the hottest topics for both consumers and corporations in recent years. On average, a cyber attack happens every 39 seconds and costs the United States economy $3.5 billion each year. Today, we are joined with Zach Grant, VP of Enterprise Solutions and Security Expert at MetTel, to learn more about cybersecurity and a new breed of tools available to help combat this constant threat. Welcome, Zach.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Welcome. So great to have you on the show. Zach, I have to start by saying that I still remember the first trip you and I took together, because I learned something about you that I honestly didn't expect. And I don't know if you remember this, but we were driving in a rental car from one state to another, trying to make a dinner meeting in Columbus, Ohio. And I looked over and saw the speedometer somewhere around 105. Now, Zach must have noticed me clinching to the bar in the car, because he turned to me and said, "Don't worry, Max, I'm an ex-New Mexico state trooper." Now, that's something you don't necessarily hear every day. So how did that transition happen?
Yeah, I was always interested in law enforcement. So pretty much my entire life, I'd always dreamed about being in law enforcement. Obviously, I started out my career in the military and then started going to school. And in college, I was intrigued by technology and was looking for a part-time job. I started working for a local ISP and going to college at the same time and really focusing on law enforcement. So I pursued that track. But as I got into my career, digital forensics and digital security really became a topic that I started hearing more and more. And, with my schooling and my interest and just this natural knack for networking and technology, I thought, I'll start looking at doing maybe cybersecurity, digital forensics, and so started going down that track. And then again, that's how I ended up here, right? Kind of made the leap away from the public sector into the private sector. And, just kind of found my niche working with customers and talking about not only just networking, but cybersecurity and, how to protect your digital assets and keep your family and your company safe.
Oh, it's a real change of career direction.
It is. And it's funny because Max, what year was that? That had to be 7, 8 years ago?
I have to say it's got to be like 2015, 16, maybe.
Okay,
105.
I was going to say I have a horrible memory, but I believe that is a true story because that sounds just like me. I am I'm a lead foot, that's for sure.
Maybe you're used to a lot of high-speed car chases.
That's right.
One term we hear a lot about in cybersecurity is SASE. And I have to be honest, the first time I was talking about this with Max, I thought he was talking about my attitude. I didn't understand.
Well, you may have been sassy in the past, but this time I was referring to the industry term.
Yeah, but actually SASE stands for Secure Access Service Edge. Can you explain it in its basic form? What is SASE?
Yeah, absolutely. And it can get a little bit confusing because SASE is used interchangeably in two different ways. So as you alluded to, it's an acronym that stands for, Service Access, Secure Access Service Edge. And really that's just a replacement of our traditional routers and our traditional firewalls that are protecting our fixed assets. So from that perspective, it's easy concept because what we're talking about is really taking a centralized security model, right? So instead of having your security stack in one location and forcing all your traffic to that centralized location, SASE allows us to take that centralized security model and distribute it to all the endpoints, and those endpoints are being identified as SASE. But where the confusion comes in is the industry as a whole is also calling the overall strategy for our next evolution of security SASE, right? And it's a unified or uniform methodology that really is being introduced and pushed by Gartner to get all of the different vendors, all of the different technologies aligned so that we're all together in lockstep to thwart a lot of the upcoming and emerging threats that we're seeing in the industry.
Wow. And I wonder then what's behind why we're seeing so much growth and traction with SASE? What did companies do before?
So, it really started with SD-WAN. So we have this centralized model for security. And about 10 to 12 years ago, we started seeing SD-WAN introduced into the environment. And what SD-WAN does for you is it really makes your network traffic more efficient. It gets you to your applications a lot faster. But the way that SD-WAN does that is it needs to route differently. It needs to take a different path than that fixed centralized security model would accommodate for. And so what we saw was a little bit of a conflict where we were investing in SD-WAN. We were working to make our traffic much more efficient. But through that, what happened was we started bypassing our security stacks. And that really brought the industry together to say, guys, we need to maintain our security, but we want to keep driving this efficiency forward. So that's really where the concept of SASE came down. And it said, listen, take that centralized security policy, get it distributed to as many endpoints as possible. And then that way your endpoints can communicate directly and bypass lengthy network segments and long transit halls to get to your applications. So the network becomes more secure, faster, more efficient, and a lot more user-friendly.
How does SASE benefit everyday employees or consumers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first off, all of us are being impacted by these cyber criminals. So I like to think of it a lot like shoplifting, right? Shoplifting is not necessarily a victimless crime when the costs of shoplifting are passed on to us as the consumers. So for us, having a good cybersecurity strategy is going to continue to keep companies' costs down. It's going to protect our assets. It's going to protect our information, our personal information, which is everywhere, right? No matter where we go in today's world, your name, your date of birth, your social security number is distributed. And so for us, protecting that data is about protecting all of us.
Wow. Do you have a specific, like a personal story where you've had to kind of be the receiving end of some of this, as you said, shoplifting, but in a more digital form?
Absolutely, I have. So just recently, somebody tried to rent out my house, and I had some unexpected guests coming to try to rent my house. So that was most recently within the last few weeks. But the biggest one that was really impactful to myself and my family, I was closing on a house here in Colorado where I live. And the title company that I was working with, their network was actually hacked into, and they took over their Office 365 environment. And so what was happening were these thugs were watching and monitoring emails. They were manipulating files. And so the particular title company, what they did is they had wiring instructions that they stored in their Office 365 environment. And the bad actors were able to get in, change the wiring instructions, and put fraudulent bank accounts.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. And it's pretty incredible because, they're very strict on their rules, right? How you're going to do transferring of large amounts of money. So they would give me instructions and say, hey, you need to dial in. You need to talk to one of our advisors. We need to authenticate everything. Then we're going to give you instructions. So I did it. I followed the rules. I followed all of their instructions. And the downside was the instructions they had been modified. So I ended up sending significant amounts of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars to these bad actors into a fraudulent bank account. And luckily, I was able to recover my funds. But in this particular breach, there were 28 victims and only 3 of us were able to recover.
Wow. So how were you one of the lucky ones that was able to get your funds back? That's something people wouldn't even think about during a major transaction like a home purchase.
Right.
Yeah. You don't think about it. And really, it came down to my experience in the industry. And there was just a few telltale signs that made me uncomfortable. And believe it or not, this was a very sophisticated group. And what happened was, once I felt uncomfortable, I notified the title company via email and said, "Hey, I would like to pause everything, and I'd like to meet. I believe that there might be a security issue." And within 20 to 30 minutes, I got a call from my financial institution, and they were assuring me that everything was okay, that the money transfer was safe, and that it got deposited into the right account. And believe it or not, the hackers spoofed a phone number and called me. They were monitoring the email. So it's not, it's a very in-depth pursuit, because they make so much money. So much money's involved. They're incentivized to get as sophisticated as possible.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like Ocean's 11 or something.
Yeah,
I mean,
like
they really thought of everything, right?
They did. It really was. And you know, a lot of different organizations, Gartner being one of them, IBM, they're predicting that by 2025, cyber crimes are going to cost the world $10.5 trillion annually. So think about that, right? So you have thugs, mafia, cartel, terrorists, enemies of the state that are making, right, more than double the world's third largest economy, which is Japan.
Wow.
Every year. So these guys are bringing as much sophistication as the US government can bring, right, to thwart these. And so it's not a simple answer. It's not an easy topic, because we're really up against organizations that have much more money, much more power, and are much more organized than you would think we are. And that's just because of how dispersed we are, how segregated we are, how everybody has different strategies. And that ties back to SASE. And that's why you see organizations like Gartner really pushing for a unified strategy amongst multiple providers, technologies, and that's to combat, this very sophisticated environment that we're moving towards.
Wow. I think your law enforcement background must have kicked in.
Yeah.
You knew there was, like, your spidey senses told you something was probably not right. And luckily you were able to recover. But like you said, it's not just them stealing money. I mean, that industry is the size of, a large economy with the amount of theft that takes place.
Yeah. It's pretty significant. And one of the things that I do is I do some cybersecurity training. And in one of my segments of training, we talk about, if you're a victim, how do you report it? How do you get help? How do you get resources? And that's really what benefited me the most, because if you just pick up the phone and call your local FBI field office, no one's going to answer, right? It's an automated tree. You need to know the extension. It's very extensive routing, and you're not really going to get to human resources immediately. And I teach that in one of my segments. And the best way to report the crime, and the division with the FBI is called IC3. And so if you go to their website and file a report, they're very diligent at filtering and looking at the prioritization of the reports. And luckily, I was able to get an investigator, to call me back. We were able to freeze the assets, and I was able to recover my money. But unfortunately, out of the 28 of us, only 3 of us were able to recover our funds. Wow. But it was in the millions of dollars.
That's unbelievable. I'm going to remember that, by the way. IC3. That's a good tip. What about companies that use SD-WAN today? Do they just need to completely replace SD-WAN with SASE? Is it like something they need to upgrade into? How does that work?
Yeah, it's more of an upgrade, because that uniform strategy, that includes multiple technologies. SD-WAN is one of those technologies. So really, it is an upgrade. And a lot of times the SD-WAN platforms that are out there, they're incorporating the SASE elements and that security into their existing bundle. And so for a lot of organizations, a lot of individuals, it's just going to be an upgrade and just kind of an evolution of moving forward to increasing their security abilities. A lot of it too is going to require a little bit of a different administrative approach to how we do cybersecurity. If you have any young kids, any teenagers that you're mentoring, Definitely encourage them to look at at cybersecurity as a profession. And the reason I say that is we're not backing off of this. It's not shrinking. This is a growing industry. And one of the main drivers is the concepts are moving from this blacklist, right? What can I not get to from network resources and applications to more of a whitelist, meaning, okay, what is approved for me to get to? Because the list of bad sites and malicious sites is now much larger and much more advanced than the whitelist. So companies are taking a different approach, and that's one of the strategies of SASE is, hey, let's look at what we can get to instead of stop looking at what we can't get to or shouldn't get to.
Another term we keep hearing about is zero trust. What is the difference between SASE and zero trust?
Zero trust, again, like SD-WAN, is another module inside of the SASE strategy. But zero trust is a little bit more around our mobility asset. So earlier we mentioned that Secure Access Service Edge, right? That was the acronym for SASE, and that was really meant to protect our fixed assets. So if you look at a company, whether it's small, medium, or enterprise, they need the SASE to protect fixed assets like printers, TVs, different types of assets that don't necessarily have software or don't necessarily have operating system that we can install software on to protect them. But there's a lot of assets that do have that capabilities, like our laptops, like our cell phones. And so Zero Trust is a software application that goes on those devices. And again, it takes that centralized security policy and now it puts it down to the endpoint. So when you're mobile, when you're working from home, when we're working from Starbucks, you're able to get on an unsecure network, but have the same security and the same protection than if you were working at a corporate office behind a SASE device. So it's really unifying that security policy no matter where you go. And again, it makes operations more efficiently and it makes your network more efficiently because now you're not hairpinning, you're not taking the long road to get to your destination. SD-WAN and the different technologies allowing you to get to those resources as close as possible. So it just works better end user experience.
That's interesting. So what is the difference between a traditional software-based firewall and zero trust?
Yeah, I kind of alluded to it earlier, right? That firewall is going to be more of a blacklist. Hey, I'm going to stop you from getting here, where zero trust is more of, okay, we're not going to let you get anywhere except for the whitelist. Where are we going to allow you to go? So it's a little bit tighter control, more arduous as far as administration, because we have to now know everywhere where our customers or our employees are going to go. But again, it's much more beneficial because we're blocking and stopping a majority of where the threats are coming from. And what I mean by that is there have been studies on all of the cyber crimes that we've observed over the years. And what we have found is 95% of all successful hacks and intrusions have been caused by human error. So it doesn't matter how much you train your employees, how much you train your family, the attackers or the bad actors are always getting more and more sophisticated. They're using more and more techniques to trick us and make us look like that email is authentic or that website is authentic, or even the SSID, right? You go into a Starbucks, you join the Starbucks network, you don't know if that's really Starbucks. That could be a bad actor. So zero trust and that whitelist concept is really saying we're gonna take the responsibility, not necessarily away from our employees. We want to continue to train them, but it really takes that the onus into technology so that we're not having to trust humans to not be fooled like we've been seeing over the past few years.
So besides securing, like you said, the mobile assets, are there other benefits to zero trust?
You know what? Yes, and it's efficiency. So by enabling zero trust, we're able to leverage other technologies like SD-WAN, right? We're not giving away security for convenience, or we're not giving our convenience away for security. And so for me, making the network much more efficient benefits all of us while keeping it secure. And I'll give you an example. And a lot of folks don't know this. Netflix, right? All of us might subscribe to a Hulu or a Netflix. And at home, right, I'm on my laptop, I go to Netflix. If my latency, right, the time it takes me to get to Netflix is 40 milliseconds, then my throughput, right, the amount of data that I can watch Netflix is like 13 megabits per second. If my latency doubles from 40 milliseconds to 80 milliseconds, my bandwidth capabilities goes from like 13 meg to 6 meg. I know that's a little geeky, a little bit technical, but when we talk about, hey, my Netflix or my Hulu quality is bad, what's the first thing we all think of? Let's go buy more bandwidth. And it doesn't matter. You can have, 100 meg at your house. You can have a gig at your house. Throwing more bandwidth at the problem doesn't fix it. It's all about how we move our traffic and make it more efficient to reduce that latency. The lower latency, the faster throughput we actually get. So a lot of folks don't know that. And we see companies throw bandwidth, spending a lot of extra money when they don't need to. What they need to do is look at SD-WAN and find out how to move that traffic more efficiently, how to get to their resources, more quickly. And that solves the problem. And that's why SD-WAN is so critical. But at the same time, that's why SASE is so critical, because we need the convenience, but we also need that security. And pairing those together is really forward-looking. It looks like we're going to be much more successful thwarting a lot of the security crimes that we're seeing today.
That's great. So I guess SD-WAN is a building block in that scenario as well. I just wanted to share a real example that I think a lot of people could associate with. I know that during the pandemic, you were actually living in an urban city in Utah and recently moved to a ranch in rural Colorado. So I have to ask, number one, what's behind the move? Because I'm excited to hear all about it. And how can all the security that we're talking about today be used in that type of example?
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, I grew up on a ranch, so I'm used to country life, and human behavior, you tend to always kind of fall back to what you know. So when the pandemic hit, and it was a year and a half, I'm stuck in urban Utah, with very close neighbors, stuck in our house, not able to go to the gym, not able to go to restaurants. It really motivated me to say, okay, let's go back to your roots, and let's see if that's a little bit of a better lifestyle for somebody like me. And of course, my family, I observed, having kids, that they didn't necessarily have the same common sense that I did growing up, because I had to depend on myself. And so for me, it was a move to really say, okay, kids, you need to be able to depend on yourself, go drive your four-wheelers, your tractors, go get on the horses. We need to go do some chores. And we have the year and a half that we've been in Colorado, I've seen a lot of growth in my kids. Their schoolwork, believe it or not, has actually improved their grades. So for us, it's been a good move. And the wife, she didn't grow up on the ranch, right? So she's I'm pulling her a little bit, but yeah. And as far as digital security and how that ties into the ranch life, it's all intertwined, right? If you look at what a rancher does as far as buying, selling beef, cattle, raising horses, it's a very expensive industry, and it's one of the industries that's targeted by cyber criminals. So for me, I like the exposure of both that urban living, technology, immersing myself in it, at the same time being able to be a rancher, live out in the middle of nowhere. It works together, and it's very much intertwined. Cyber crimes apply to everybody, no matter where you're at, where you live. And just because I'm out in the country doesn't mean I'm any less vulnerable than if I was in the city.
Wow, a ranch. I was wondering, what kind of animals do you raise on your ranch?
Horses, cattle, chickens, goats, dogs. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. As an animal lover, I've always joked that I wanted to live on a farm, but I think I meant a ranch. Isn't it true that all ranches are farms, but not all farms are ranches?
That's right. I've got quite the crop that I grow, but I'm not considered a farm. I'm considered a ranch. And really, it's because everything we grow is to support the animals and help keep them healthy. And it's quite the adventure.
Wow, I didn't know that, the difference between a farm and a ranch.
I know. I never really thought about it myself until you were talking about the animals, because I guess farms really do mostly grow crops, whereas the ranch raises cattle and different animals.
Yeah, the ranch will raise crops as well, but generally those crops and what you're growing is to support and feed the animals that you're raising, versus a farm is really raising that food for human consumption. So that's the biggest difference, and it is a little bit intertwined. But
wow, I think we need to do this, Max.
I think you might be right.
You seem very happy.
Sounds like it's good for the kids. It's good for the grades.
Great for the kids. Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you maintain a ranch and a full-time job, especially knowing that you travel a lot like me?
Yeah, absolutely. That it is a little bit difficult at times, but that goes back to I depend on my family. I depend on my kids. And so, my kids are waking up 5 a.m. They've got chores to do. They have animals to feed. And so they really fill the gaps when I'm gone. When I'm back, I try to take the weekend responsibility and let them have the weekend off. So they really do it during the week. I do it on the weekend. That allows me to travel for work. And it works out real well. And the good news is my oldest daughter, she really didn't have good grades in school. We moved to the ranch. We saw a little bit of a turnaround, and now she's actually in vet school. She's a vet tech at a local veterinarian. And so for me, that's great, because when it comes to inoculating the cattle and providing medical care for them, I've got a right hand person now to help me out with that.
Wow, we happen to have a few high schoolers. Are you taking interns?
Right? Put them to work.
Summer internship. Ship them over.
Yeah, how do you think? I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, I thought they would be kicking and screaming. I thought that they would hate the extra work and the chores. They thrive. They absolutely love it. It is not difficult to get them to help out, just because it's a different experience. And when you do anything with animals, kids love it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
How do you think your day job in network security has prepared you for this rural lifestyle as a rancher?
You know what? It's all about the unknown. Every day you wake up and you do not know what you're going to face. And that's what we deal with in the cybersecurity world. And that's what I deal with on the home ranch. I've had fences that were torn down and cattle scattered, and I had to jump on my horse and ride 7 miles and go find them. You never know day to day what's going to happen.
You know what, Zach? We've worked together for, I think, like 10 plus years at this point. And I've really only seen you in a suit and tie. I have a hard time envisioning you running around in a cowboy hat and boots.
I know a lot of people will tell me that. A lot of folks that know me, the first time that they see me in a cowboy hat, boots, it's a little bit shocking. But you know what's great is, do you guys watch Yellowstone? Have you?
No, I have. We have not.
I've seen like one episode. We have to watch it.
I know. That's Kevin Costner's in there as well, right?
Yeah, Kevin Costner. And it's funny because, Max, you guys are out on the East Coast. I work with a lot of East Coast folks. And it's funny, everybody I talk to, the big thing is they're watching Yellowstone. It's a great drama, and it's given folks exposure to what living out in the country looks like. So I get a lot of questions from our folks out in New York. Am I living like Yellowstone? And the answer is no. Obviously, that's all drama like on Dallas. But I do. Have horses we ride, and that takes a lot of people back who've known me professionally. They're like, really? That seems odd.
Well, there is something very cool about a cowboy hat.
It is. In fact, when I wear my cowboy.
Do you mean like this?
Well, actually, I think I mean like this.
Nice. Well, for me, sometimes I get accused of looking like Rip on Yellowstone because of the beard, and I put on the hat, even though it doesn't work real well with my
wow.
Oh, you do look like Rip.
I see it.
I've went a few times to our local state fair, and I have been told I can look like him once in a while.
I like it. I think I need to follow this show now. I'm ready. I'm ready to move to the ranch.
We're ready to go to the ranch. I like it.
Well, that brings us to game time. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
For this episode, we would like to play a game called Drinks, Deal, or Defer. So that's where I will give you 3 names, and you just say who you would like to have drinks with, who you would make a deal with, and who you would just defer for a later time.
Okay. Interesting. I've never played this, but looking forward to it.
All right. Number 1, Ted Turner, American entrepreneur, TV producer, and philanthropist. With approximately 2 million acres of personal and ranch land, he owns the world's largest private bison herd and the 4th largest individual landowner in the United States.
So I'm going to go with defer, but I do want you guys to know, earlier I said I was born and raised on a ranch. That ranch was Vermejo Park in New Mexico. So yeah, I'm going to defer just because I know enough about Mr. Turner.
But you haven't heard the other options.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
They could be really horrible.
could be
You might
worse.
want to take that back.
I'm going to
All
leave
right.
this on because I feel like a cowgirl. Roger Goodell, some may call him the most powerful man in sports, commissioner of the National Football League. He is the man responsible for decisions by the NFL, and most recently, the new updated concussion diagnosis and management protocol. He is most definitely a polarizing person right now. Bill Burns, director of the CIA. In honor of the department's 75th anniversary, the CIA has opened a new museum and launched a podcast. So now you have all three.
Interesting. Well, I definitely want to sit down and have dinner and socialize with anybody who's in the CIA. I want to know all the secrets. So that's an easy one for me. I would strike a deal with Roger Goodell, and that deal would probably be making some changes to some of the platforms and the teams. And last but not least, I would defer with Ted Turner. So I know enough of him, been around him enough.
Wow, that's cool.
By the way, that CIA museum, that sounds super cool.
Yeah, where is that again?
It's actually in Virginia, and there is like a variety of spy codes all over the ceilings. And the CIA actually plans to put some of them online to see if they can be broken.
Really?
Ooh.
That sounds so fun.
I feel like we need to take a trip there too.
Yeah, we got to go check that out.
Wow. Well, thank you, Zach, for talking to us today about SASE, Zero Trust, and network security.
You bet. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Zach. To learn more about SASE or any other MetTel services, go to mettel.net or contact your MetTel sales representative.